From Whitebeard to Blackbeard, from Joy Boy to Luffy, some powers in One Piece just don't want to stay dead, so today we're gonna dive into every single devil fruit that's been passed down or even stolen and what has changed between different users. But to start, I want to shake things up quite literally with the Gura Gura no Mi, otherwise known better as the Tremor or Earthquake fruit. Now this Paramecia type devil fruit was wielded by none other than the one and only Edward Newgate, aka Whitebeard himself. You know, the man known as the strongest in the entire world until he wasn't. And this absolute unit of a fruit gives the user the power to generate massive, world-breaking earthquakes. Like, we're not just talking about crack the ground and scare some Marines level quakes, no. We're talking tsunamis, island splits, and hey Sengoku, wanna watch me sink literal marine forts type destruction, if you catch my drift? But what really makes this fruit the massive threat that it is isn't just the shockwaves, because it's more how Whitebeard uses them to begin with. Because he was able to coat his fists or even his massive Naginata in tremor energy, creating spatial cracks that rip through matter like paper. Like, I guess you could say that he wasn't just punching you, he was punching the air around you too and letting physics kind of finish the job. And if you're not familiar, the Gura Gura no Mi was straight up described by Oda as having the power to destroy the entire world. I mean, honestly, it kind of doesn't get much more OP than that, though as we'll see it does, but still pretty broken. But then when Whitebeard died at Marineford, of course completely of natural causes, the fruit's powers didn't just reincarnate in another devil fruit somewhere like what we usually see happen when the devil fruit, goes through its revival cycle. Nope. Instead, it got stolen, which means it's now time to queue up the scummiest fruit grab in One Piece history, because Marshall D. Teach, aka Blackbeard, just swiped the Gura Gura no Mi straight out of Whitebeard's body. Now, if you're wondering how exactly he did that, we still don't quite know. Maybe Blackbeard had a fruit suitable for it with him under that sheet of his, then the power transferred into that fruit and he ate it right away, or he did something more gnarly and maybe ate Whitebeard's heart? Yikes. But anyways, the point is, the fruit got stolen. And this event was absolutely insane in the story if you remember it, because to stick with the theme of this video, it was pretty much the first time we knew about a devil fruit power being used by someone else a second time. Like, literally up until halfway point through the story, it was always one devil fruit with one character, and that was kind of that. So talk about an actual game changer. And on top of that, of course, you technically also aren't supposed to have two devil fruits at the same time, the whole exploding your body thing, but I mean, that's a whole different topic. So yeah, this was a massive deal for, everything that we knew about the story, and I can't wait to one day find out how he actually pulled that off. At first, Teach was of course kind of reckless with this power as he just had gained it. The man could barely control the tremors, and honestly, it was kind of like a toddler driving a big old truck, but nowadays, after the time skip, he's gotten a lot more comfortable just casually quaking the entire battlefield. And of course, since we've now seen two different emperors use the same devil fruit, we just have to ask the most important question of all: who quaked it better? I mean, Whitebeard had total mastery over the Gura Gura no Mi. His control, just raw strength, and battlefield awareness made him an absolutely terrifying army of one. And on the other hand, Blackbeard is kind of more like a chaotic blender of death. He's less refined, sure, but maybe even more dangerous because of his unpredictability and the fact that he also, of course, has the Yami Yami no Mi on top of everything. Yeah, I mean, earthquakes and darkness, yikes, talk about a really wild and, kind of broken combination. But in terms of purely the tremor fruit, I do think I've got to give the edge to Whitebeard until we see more from the fruit with Blackbeard. I'm pretty confident he will overpass, his old captain sooner than later. And I mean, I gotta say, the power to destroy the entire world, kind of cool and all, but what if you just didn't want to get hit by anything in the first place? Don't worry, I got you covered. Enter the Body Body no Mi, the Barrier fruit, and unlike the Tremor fruit, we actually met the second known user of this fruit long before we ever met the first. Let me very quickly break down the fruit first though, because this Paramecia type gives its user the power to create an unbreakable barrier. Like, actually physically unbreakable. You can punch it, slash it, I don't know, if you want to you can throw a mountain at it. It doesn't really matter. This thing is not gonna go down to anything. Now we were first introduced to this fruit in Dressrosa, where we meet the walking fan club himself, Bartolomeo, who first showed off this unstoppable defensive power during the Colosseum tournament by casually blocking a full-powered Fishman punch right here. And he's just a total contrast to Semimaru, where Semimaru was serious and mysterious, Barto is loud, proud, and just kind of toxically obsessed with Luffy. He has like this weird parasocial relationship with him, and we don't know exactly when he ate the fruit first, but don't let the jokes fool you, because Barto uses the Bari Bari no Mi in some actually surprisingly clever ways. He can make a barrier, ride it like an elevator, turn it into a battering ram, or just stand there while enemies break their fists trying to touch him. The only catch with the fruit is that you can only make one barrier at a time with a limited surface area. But of course, if you've paid attention, things haven't been exactly looking too rosy for him recently, because there's just a real chance that Bartolomeo might straight up be dead after his run-in with the Red Hair Pirates. Now, it's still possible that he's alive. No one's guaranteed to be dead in One Piece until we really see a body. He could certainly shield himself from the explosion and, I don't know, maybe possibly even float on his barrier, which would be super useful, but just consider the insane possibility if he is actually dead. Like, could this be the first devil fruit in the series we see move on to a third user? I mean, that would be pretty crazy, actually. If you're wondering now who the first person is, though, let's go back a few decades for this, because the first known user of this fruit is Kurozumi Semimaru, who we met during the Oden flashback in the Wano Kuni arc. And just to make this clear, this guy was more than just a glorified Orochi bodyguard. He was an absolute magician with this fruit. Like, he strummed that loot like a rock star while casually blocking Kozuki Oden's attacks. Yeah, that Oden. Chat Oden right here. One of the most powerful samurai in the series couldn't crack this thing, couldn't even give it a scratch. Semimaru held it down in Wano during Orochi's rise to power, and while we don't know exactly when he got the fruit or how he died and how that fruit then came to Barto, it's pretty safe to say that his barrier game was absolutely broken. As for who used it better, Bartolomeo for me kind of gets the edge here. I mean, we've simply seen him push the fruit's versatility way further. Going from pure defense to surprising levels of offense, he's kind of made the Bari Bari no Mi way much more fun to watch than what we got during Wano. But moving on from unbreakable walls, we now go to shape-shifting deception, because let's hand things over to one of the single sneakiest fruits in the entire series, the Mane Mane no Mi, also known as the Clone fruit. And this fruit ended up in the hands of someone absolutely fabulous, Bentham, better known as Mr. Two Bone Clay. Now, we don't know exactly once again when he got the fruit, but he obviously had a ton of experience using it by the time that the Straw Hats ran into him just before the Alabasta arc properly kicked into gear. And let me just say that Mr. Two is really a true visionary with his powers, because not only can he turn into anyone that he's touched before, but he can also mix and match features to create completely fresh disguises. And what makes Bon Clay really stand out isn't just the power, it's how he uses it. He's a master of timing and deception. Like, do you remember when he was flipping between Nami's body and his own forms mid-battle, like against Sanji to throw him off, or when he seduced the jailers in Impel Down, or when he made the ultimate sacrifice by sneaking into the control rooms to open the gates of justice for Luffy? The dude is just the ultimate homie, turned into one of my favorite characters in the story, and uses his shapeshifting powers as well as anyone in the entire story has been using their devil fruit powers in general. However, then, if we head back in time again, the first user of this fruit that we know of was, once again, a Kurozumi Higurashi. Shockingly, another repeater fruit from the Oden flashback in Wano. And Oda, for some reason, was really double-dipping in that section of the story, which I still find somewhat suspicious to this point. I just can't quite put my finger on why that is. As for her with this fruit, we do know that she got the fruit when she left Wano for many years in the past. We can assume that she most likely was a pirate, maybe with the Rocks pirates, and even met people like Shiki at one point, as we see when she transforms her face into his, but back in Wano, she was out there using it to trick literal daimyos and shape the future of Wano country. Because there was just no way that one, Orochi even becomes shogun without Higurashi appearing as Oden's father Sukiyaki, and two, Kaido would have gotten the snot kicked out of him by Oden if Higurashi didn't fool the legendary samurai by turning into his son Momonosuke on the battlefield. But if you wanted to boil it down, basically the entire Wano oppression storyline and Kaido's conquest would just straight up not have been possible without her. But interfering in Kaido's battle got her a one-way ticket to execution, which is how her devil fruit popped back into the world somewhere, though again, no idea how it then ended up with Ben Thembonkle out of all the people. Still kind of cool. The next up, since I've got my aircon on max level, since it's just a burning barren of death heat outside in Japan right now, let's still turn up the heat a little bit with the Mera Mera no Mi, also known as the Flame fruit, which is easily the most emotionally charged of all the devil fruits that we have with 2 users. Because I mean, come on, let's just look at what we had to go through in order to get to this point in the story. Obviously, the first user we know of was Portgas D. Ace, Luffy's childhood friend, and he found that fruit on Six's Island in the East Blue after he crash landed there, you know, when he first set out to become a pirate. This Logia devil fruit lets Ace transform into flames itself, launch massive fire punches, and basically incinerate everything in his path while rising up the ranks in the pirate world. But maybe my favorite power might be him riding around on his fire-powered boat. I mean, I just think that's an insanely creative way to use a fire fruit, and when we first met him in Alabaster, he was already one of the top officers in an Emperor's crew, Whitebeards, and he had raw power, wild potential, and that natural flair you expect from, you know, the son of the Pirate King. What might come as a shock to you though, sorry for the big spoilers, this journey of his with the fruit sadly ended at Marineford with one of the most emotional and most donut-shaped gut punches in the entire series. But the fire fruit didn't burn out quite yet, because the second known user is no one other than Sabo, Luffy's other brother, and now the chief of staff of the Revolutionary Army, basically Dragon's second in command. After winning the fruit during the Dressrosa tournament, Sabo didn't waste any time whatsoever, and we can see that he's been really busy training with it in a short amount of time, and from the looks of things has been working hard to make this power truly his own now. So, since these two are both Luffy's brothers and brothers themselves, why not do what brothers do and debate about who uses the fruit truly better? And I mean, for sure, Ace had the charisma and the talent to make the Mera Mera no Mi look absolutely effortless. He had literal years to become a true master of the flames, but Sabo, on the other hand, he's the better overall fighter, we gotta admit. You know, thanks to his hockey and his martial artist skills with the dragon claw style and all. How does he do it again? It's kind of like this, right? And he's obviously dedicated to get as powerful as he can with his new devil fruit, and Sabo's even now known already as the Flame Emperor around the world, something that Ace just never kind of managed to do. So I don't know, Sabo might not have Ace's raw presence, but there's no question in my mind that he's closing the gap very fast at least, and honestly probably is gonna surpass Ace, or already has surpassed Ace at this point in the story, making him probably the better user out of the two. Now, before we jump into the next couple of fruits, I do think it's worth pointing out at this point something that very often gets overlooked with devil fruits in general. Because when you think about it, most devil fruits, they've probably had several users over the many centuries that they've been around. The only reason that characters even know about specific abilities or weaknesses or what certain devil fruits look like is because other people had to use them before them. That's how a devil fruit encyclopedia can even exist in the first place. And people like Blackbeard didn't just guess what the Yami Yami no Mi actually did. No, he studied that fruit for many years. He waited for it, he knew what it looked like, so someone else obviously must have had it before him, which made Blackbeard believe that it was so insanely broken. Probably Rocks, his daddy, right? So yeah, there's a really good chance that pretty much every devil fruit that we've seen has had many users. We just don't know who those previous users were or what they did with their devil fruits. And we do know for a fact of some devil fruits that they did have more than one user, and this next upcoming one is actually a perfect example of that. Because let's talk about the Uta Uta no Mi, or the Song Song fruit. Technically, this one isn't confirmed canon in the main manga, kind of like only half confirmed, but Uta is canon and the fruit does show up in Film Red, and I just want to talk about it because it is insanely cool and has way too much history and lore around it to ignore. In case you haven't seen Film Red, the Sing Sing fruit has some insanely busted powers. If you think that Luffy can bend reality with Gear 5th, well, he's got kind of nothing on this fruit because with the Sing Sing fruit powers, Uta can send people's consciousness into a dream world where she controls everything. Soldiers, scenery, physics, yeah, she's basically a literal god in this entire realm. Now the catch here is that the dream world only can exist while she's awake. If she sleeps, everyone wakes up. But if she dies, then it gets really terrifying because people trapped in that dream stay there forever. It's like the ultimate seal to put people away, technically. And obviously we saw all of this with Uta in Film Red, but we do know within the canon of that movie at least that there has been a confirmed previous user of the fruit. However, unlike the few fruits that we've discussed so far and the ones we're going to discuss later on, we actually don't know who that person was, only that they existed. Because all that we do know is that at some point in the past, someone who had used this fruit used it to seal away the musical demon taught Musica with a cursed song. So even though we don't know who they were, that's still some ancient boss level Bard energy right there, because they basically had to sacrifice their own life in order to seal away this demon for good. And obviously that person died and Uta ate the fruit later on, at least in the movie, so I do kind of wonder if Oda will make this fruit actual canon in the story, because he's already mentioned in the movie that there is something like Taught Musica in the real story, so maybe some version of the fruit will show up as well, or some other devil fruit, maybe Emu's, or if he has a devil fruit, right? Or some other person's thing can do something else, where, you know, a previous user sealed something away, but then a later user uses that to unleash some great evil. So moving on from this, let's now talk about an absolutely OP devil fruit that is canon, because next up we have the Ope Ope no Mi, or the Operation Fruit. Now, of course, the current user is Trafalgar D. Water Law, who ate the fruit when he was a kid. He first used it on screen back in chapter 498, and from that moment on, it was clear that Law had eaten one of the single most busted devil fruits in the entire story. This paramecia type gives the user the ability to create a room, and inside of that room, the user becomes a surgical god. They can swap places with objects, cut people without harming them, steal hearts, flip personalities, manipulate sound waves, and even shock opponents with insane precision. They can even mess with size and perform instant amputations like it's no big deal. So do you actually understand how terrifying that would be? Like, just imagine you're some random scrub marine here and the Ope Ope no Mi fruit user starts doing all of that crap. I'd honestly just give up right then and there. It's absolutely terrifying to think about it. And now that Law has awakened the devil fruit, he can apply rune powers directly to objects like his sword. For instance, his anesthesia attack that we saw in Wano lets him phase his blade through matter and puncture, the opponent, which will then create these internal shockwaves with devastating effects. So yeah, I honestly think that this fruit might just be the single most versatile one that we've seen in the story so far. But here's the kicker. It's not even its strongest ability, because this fruit can literally grant someone immortality. It does that by allowing a user to perform the so-called perpetual youth operation, a one-time procedure that kills the user but then grants eternal life to someone else. And while we of course don't know who the previous users of this fruit were, we do know someone has used it for sure in the story before. And I have a very strong suspicion that the world government has used the immortality surgery at least once in history before, but probably many times if we're being honest. It's not confirmed, but it would perfectly explain a few suspiciously long lifespans in the upper ranks. And funnily enough, the revolutionary Ivankov basically spelled out this very idea for us, so yeah, I'm looking at you, Emu, and also the Gorosei, but this knowledge is once again how we do know that there was confirmed a previous user of the fruit. Like, there's no way anyone knows how valuable this fruit is or what it can do unless someone has used it before. Also, if you want to bend the reality of YouTube yourself, then why not consider joining the Patreon using the link in the description, because by joining you instantly gain access to a ton of exclusive monthly content, artwork, early access videos, a lot of other unique and cool stuff that we do over there, and you do support the channel by doing so. If you don't have the money and still want something for free, we do have a weekly newsletter that, you know, gives you all the news about One Piece, the anime, the manga, anything else Oda's up to, so you are always up to date and join there for free. Go check it out. And now back to the video. Now, we've seen multiple users for fruits that can tear the world apart and others that can bend reality, but sometimes I think the scariest power is simply not being seen at all. Which brings us to the Suke no Mi, the clear fruit, which allows the user to turn themselves and anything they touch completely invisible. Of course, the first user we ever met was Absalom back in Thriller Bark, where he showed off his power of being an absolute creep by peeping on Nami and harassing Robin in the shower. He also used it for fighting by turning himself and his weapon invisible for some deadly sneak attacks. And then later on in the story, he used his powers to become a freelance photographer, which random, but I kind of dig it, which I gotta say, a real upgrade from his job as a professional creep. But unfortunately for him, the Blackbeard pirates saw just how useful and important this fruit could be, so they said, let us hold on for that, and Absalom was killed off screen, and they extracted his devil fruit, probably using the same method that they used for extracting the earthquake fruit from Whitebeard. Then it was eaten by Shiryu of the Rain, who is the sadistic former chief jailer of Impel Down, who somehow was too cruel for the prison that literally impales their, prisoners on spikes and whatnot, so he must have been pretty bad. But he now also has a new job as one of Blackbeard's top 10 officers. Now, so far, we've only seen him use basic invisibility for sneaking up and attacking people, but I do kind of wonder if he's got more tricks up his sleeve with this specific fruit for the final battles that we'll be seeing later. And actually, I've also always low-key wondered if this fruit actually works against observation hockey, because may I remind you, he was somehow able to sneak attack Garp, who is an absolute hockey master. Like, if it doesn't, then it's honestly pretty much a waste of an ability against anyone who can use like basic observation hockey, so it must work despite someone being able to sense their surroundings, kind of cloaking the user's presence altogether. And I think it's also worth pointing out at this point that Sanji dreamed of having this devil fruit as a kid, so that's just another example of a fruit that we know used to be really popular in the past, because Sanji read about it too in the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia. And actually, now I think about it, I do think I need to bring up one other thing here though, because something that I've always wondered about is if maybe the reason no one has ever found Laugh Tale is that maybe someone used the clear powers to make the entire island invisible. Like, maybe by awakening the Devil Fruit and using their powers to permanently affect the island, we could then speculate that this has happened to other islands on the Grand Line with past Devil Fruit users too, right? Like something like Raijin Island right here, the place that has constant lightning storms. If I had to guess, that's probably not just bad weather. There's a really good chance it was shaped by a previous user of the Lightning Logia fruit who possibly used their awakening powers on the island, and it just then became a permanent lightning hellscape. You get what I'm saying? Could be pretty cool, not sure if that's the actual explanation, but if the island itself was invisible, that'd be kinda neat. Alright, now before we dive back into traditional devil fruits, let's also take a quick detour into something a little bit different, but just as relevant and important here, which are the seraphim. Yeah, I feel like we should talk about them in this video, because those aren't your average pirates or fruit users. The seraphim are specifically genetically modified clones created by Dr. Vegapunk, combining the lineage factor, which is basically DNA of former warlords, with Lunarian DNA and, most interestingly, artificial devil fruit powers made from something called green blood. And what makes this so wild is that every single seraphim has a power that we've already seen in the story. Those aren't new devil fruits, they are artificial powers that recreate existing ones that other people have right now. And that means that the seraphim are technically second users of those fruits who are using the same powers, while the original fruit users are still very much alive alive and well. Take S-Hawk for example, who is the seraphim version of Dracula Mihawk. Now since Mihawk famously doesn't have a devil fruit power, Vegapunk gave S-Hawk the powers of the Super no Mi, originally used by these bones. Das bones. This fruit allows the body to turn into steel blades, and when combined with Mihawk's swordsmancraft, well, you can imagine it's basically a nightmare fusion of deadly sword skills and blade magic, almost like a devil, like a fan character that someone came up with. Like, oh, what if we gave Mihawk the blade fruit? Is what Vegapunk basically did. And there's also S-Bear, the clone of Bartholomew Kuma, and unlike Mihawk, Kuma of course did have a devil fruit, the Nikyu no Mi, which lets him repel anything with his paws, including people, pain, even concepts like memories. And we do know that Kuma got the fruit during the God Valley incident, and his mastery of it made him an absolute legend and one of the most dangerous people alive. And so far, we've only seen S-Bear use it mostly for raw power, launching shockwaves and teleporting around, but hasn't really shown the more creative applications quite yet, so for now I'd say that Kuma would still be the superior user. Then we have S-Shark, based on Jinbei, who has one of the most absurd power combos out of the Seraphim. Again, Vegapunk kind of doing fan combos here because he's rocking the Swim fruit originally used by Senor Pink, which then lets him dive through solid objects like their water. So combine that with Jinbei's Fishman Karate and Lunarian durability, and you've got one mean swimming machine that can swim through any material imaginable. And then of course there's also S-Snake, the Boa Hancock clone. Just like the original, she uses the Mero no Mi, which turns people to stone through desire, and what's really fascinating here is how that power translates. Because Boa Hancock uses her beauty and confidence to activate her powers, but S-Snake on the other hand uses pure cuteness and adorable energy. And it does sort of work. I mean, she petrifies Marines on sight just by being ridiculously cute. But you may not have realized that Boa Hancock might have given us confirmation that someone else also had her fruit confirmed in the past, because right here she says that even if Blackbeard kills her and takes over her devil fruit, he would still not be able to release his crewmates from being turned into stone, because she knows that her power doesn't work that way. So very clearly, by knowing that, she must have learned or read about that from previous users of the fruit, or tried to release someone who was turned to stone by a previous user but couldn't. And on top of that, there are of course a few seraphim we still haven't seen in real action yet, like S-Gecko, Flamingo, or S-Croc, and it's very likely that they have similar devil fruits to their original characters, so Gecko Moria probably gets the shadow fruit, Flamingo gets the string fruit, and Croc the sand fruit. But that hasn't been confirmed yet, and there's still a very big question mark here, especially with Logia fruits like Crocodile, because we haven't seen any proof whatsoever that Vegapunk can even clone Logia fruits yet, so it's very possible that S-Croc might have some other powers instead. Next up though, we've got another case of devil fruit being copied, but this time we actually get to see both versions of the power in a head-on-head clash, and both do exist as actual fruits. Because that's right, it's round 2 with the Uo no Mi model Seiryu, also known as the fish fruit Azure Dragon, whose first user is of course Kaido, who first showed off his dragon form in one of the single most epic cliffhangers in the entire story, and he also got that fruit from Big Mom after all the chaos that happened at God Valley, and boy did it turn him into a flying god of death. His dragon form is massive, powerful, and absolutely stacked with elemental attacks. Bro here got lightning, fire breaths, air slashes, and those flame clouds that lets him fly and then just casually carry entire islands. Like, it's no big deal, you know? Kaido in full dragon mode is basically a natural disaster with a serious alcohol addiction, if you wanted to sum it up. And then of course we've got Kozuki Momonosuke, who ate a copy of the very same fruit when he was trapped in the lab on Punk Hazards. Now Vegapunk made this fruit using Kaido's lineage factor, and while the good doctor called it a failure, well, it turns out it worked just fine. The only problem was that the color didn't fit. And as we all know, Momo then luckily finally unlocks his full adult dragon form form after he was aged up during the climax in Wano, and while he's still kind of figuring things out as far as we can tell, the potential is very clearly there. Because now Momo can also summon clouds, fly, and even ram giant fire beasts head on. So when we got to see Momo face Kaido, we were expecting some epic showdown, but no, there's no contest here. We haven't seen any elemental blasts or hybrid forms yet from aged up Momo, so he's still got a little bit of a way to go before he can call himself anywhere close to Kaido's dragon level, but it would be really cool if he got there before the end of the story, you know, to support Luffy. What is crazy though is that Kaido's fruit might actually be going to another person very soon anyways, because don't forget, Kaido might be dead. Like, he fell into the volcano under Wano and we haven't seen him since, so if he's dead, it's kind of weird that we have to say if, because with Oda you literally never know, but if he's dead, then his devil fruit will be reincarnating somewhere and I would not be surprised to see someone pick it up. Looking at you, Blackbeard. Go away. Alright. Nonetheless, it's important to remember that Kaido might not even had his devil fruit at all if Big Mom didn't already have her soul fruit powers at that point too. Like, if she didn't already have her devil fruit powers, she might have eaten the Serio fruit herself at God Valley, but that's not the case, and Big Mom's soul fruit also has 2 known users, and one of them quite literally got eaten by the other. Because the first person that we do know officially to have it was Mother Caramel, and we really only see her use it briefly during Big Mom's childhood on Elbaf. Now, using this devil fruit, she could use pieces of soul to bring objects to life, like this fire here. Pretty insane stuff, honestly, but it didn't exactly scream top tier fighter. And then we had this happen. Yeah, Mother Caramel got eaten by a young Big Mom during one of the most horrific scenes in the entire story. Yeah, and somehow by eating Mother Caramel, the devil fruit then passed on to Lin Lin. So yeah, Oda just casually confirmed that eating someone can just give you their devil fruit powers. You know, One Piece, yay, fun for the whole family. And again, I also kind of think there's a high possibility that that's what Blackbeard's doing to consume devil fruit powers too. Now, from there, we really saw just how incredibly broken this devil fruit really is, because Big Mom starts flexing this power on a completely different level. She's got a talking sun, a thundercloud homie, and her hat is a literal sword with a face. And she didn't just stop there. No, she brought entire forests, furniture, animals, and buildings to life. Her ship is a freaking thing that's alive, all using soul fragments she either took from people or had them give up willingly, or used parts of her own soul. The only catch really is that you have to fear her for her to steal parts of your soul, which, let's be honest, you would be terrified of a giant singing murder mom who's like hungry for cake. Like, at least I would be. I'm not sure about you, but yeah, that is just terrifying. Ugh. All right. Now that we're getting into the truly god tier territory here, let's talk about the Hito Hitonomi model sun god Nika, which also has at least 2 confirmed users, probably more. Now, the original user we do know about, that would be Joy Boy himself. And according to Dr. Vegapunk, Joy Boy fought with a stretchy body, which basically just confirms that this fruit goes way back all the way to the Void Century. And a bit later in the arc, Imo then straight up says that Joy Boy was responsible for the escape from Egghead, and it does seem very likely that they were referring to Luffy's powers here. Or I don't know, maybe Imo was actually talking about Joy Boy's crazy Haki knot exploding that helped everyone escape. Not 100% sure here, but we do know that Joy Boy likely died during that ancient conflict, and afterwards the world government renamed the fruit and hid it, trying to erase it from history. And there's also a really good chance that the fruit itself is more than just a power. It might quite literally be linked to the actual sun god Nika, which brings us to user number 2? Which is my boy Monkey D. Luffy, who, you know, ate the fruit in literally chapter 1 of the story after it was stolen by Shanks from a world government ship. And for most of the series, we of course all thought it was a paramecia fruit that made Luffy's body into rubber, that's it, but after awakening it on the rooftop of Wano after dying, everything changed. Literally. Because suddenly, Luffy can do whatever his imagination can think up, like turn the ground into rubber, stretch reality, bounce lightning, turn into a full-on cartoon chaos god, and summon objects out of nothingness. My man is now a true god of freedom. That's pretty awesome. Now, if we wanted to debate who used the fruit better, that's a bit of a tough one. I mean, Joy Boy was very clearly an absolute monster in his time, but we don't know if he was more of a monster hockey user who just happened to have this fruit too, or if he unlocked some Nika powers that we just have not seen at this point, which, would be my guess. And honestly, Luffy's the only one we have seen go full Nika mode at this point in the story, and he's pushing the fruit to its absolute limits already, so until we get a flashback showing Joy Boy like juggling moons or pulling stuff out of the literal sky like the sun, I've gotta say that Luffy is the better Nika so far, just by default. And while pretty much all of these fruits we've talked so far have been incredibly broken with more than one user, it doesn't really mean that these are the strongest fruits in the story. Not really, actually. There are a few other mythical fruits that could even put many on this list that we've talked about to absolute shame, and if you want to learn about literally every single mythical devil fruit in the story, you can watch that video right there. As always, thanks so much for watching. Special thanks to all our wonderful patrons over here, and I will see you in the next video.